Hey folks, today we're bringing you a recording of our very first Trap Set live event. And if you live in Los Angeles, you can get in on the fun next week, Wednesday, March 2nd, at the Steve Ellen Theater at 8 p.m. We're going to record another episode of the Trap Set live in front of an audience, and we're featuring a cavalcade of stars. We've got Fred Armisen from the 8G Band in Portlandia, Stella Mozgava of Warpaint, and the legendary Clem Burke of Blondie. You can buy tickets by visiting our website, thetrapset.net, and clicking Live Events. Buy your tickets now. This is most likely going to sell out.
The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click Donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. A few weeks ago, we tried something new. We recorded an episode of the Trap Set live in front of an audience at the world-famous Revival Drum Shop in Portland, Oregon. Our all-star panel comprised Janet Weiss, John Moen, John Sherman, and Tim Spitstix Leitch. And because we have 4 guests instead of 1, this episode is going to be extra long. Let us know what you think at thetrapset@gmail.com. Now let's go to Portland.
Okay, so our first guest, John Sherman, to my left, is one of Portland's most brutal drummers. Over the course of 3 albums and several EPs, his band Red Fang has established a rabid following locally and worldwide. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up again for Mr. John Sherman. Where do you come from, John? Where did you grow up?
Where do I come from?
I mean, spiritually, we'll get to that later, but where do you come from physically?
I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, and moved out to Portland when I was 25, about 15 years ago.
What did your parents do when you were growing up?
They were bummed all the time because I was trying to bang on shit all the time. No.
Well, what were they doing?
What did they
Managing
do?
hedge funds or something?
No.
Why were they bummed that you were trying to bang on shit all the time?
They weren't. I was trying to be funny, but I'm not. Like, what did they do for a living?
Yeah, what did they do?
My mom was a teacher, and my dad did all kinds of shit. For one of the coolest jobs he had was he went to schools, and he was the guy that made you or got you to sell magazines for prizes.
Oh,
but he
shit.
owned all those prizes. Like, he had to buy those, so he really wanted you to sell the magazines, so he gave rid of the prizes.
So what did you get for Christmas?
We had a garage full of, like, Kiss iron-ons and cool stuff. And back then, you could give away knives and guns and shit. It was cool.
So was there a lot of overstock in your garage? And did it
Yes.
find its way into your possession?
Yes, and I wish I had a lot of those iron-ons still, but don't.
Were you a happy kid?
Yeah, I've always been a happy guy.
When did you discover drums?
I don't know. I mean, I was always banging on stuff with pencils, and I just
As long as you can remember?
Yeah. I just knew that I had to bang on stuff, so you're allowed to bang on drums, so that's what happened. I got some drums. The first kit I got was I had books that I just banged on. I had a cymbal that if you hit it too hard, it would flip inside out. And I would use different sized hardcover books for different tones. And
So like the social studies book was your bass drum and the science book was your hi-hat?
yeah, no, like big old books that, yeah, dusty books. That was my first kit.
Did your parents buy you a drum set?
Well, the first real kit, quote unquote, that I got came out of a barn that my dad's buddy found.
Oh, reclaimed.
Yeah.
They like that here in Portland,
It was-
right, folks?
It was cool, and it had like a weird kick pedal that didn't have all the parts, so we took a broom handle and wrapped a bunch of tape around that, and that was the beater. But they were real drums, I think, and they looked real to me.
Did you have an ecstatic experience when you played them? Can you remember like a specific moment when you felt like shivers up your spine?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when my older brother had some girls over to the house, and I was like, well, I played drums. Check me out. You know, I was 10 or something, 12 maybe. And I thought I was the coolest dude in the world.
Do you still think you're the coolest dude in the world?
No, not like the opposite.
What happened with the girls?
They were nice to me at that point, but 'cause I was a little
How old were you?
10, 11,
Okay.
maybe 12. Yeah, young.
So, when did you start identifying as a drummer? Like, when did that become who you were?
Right around then, probably 12 years old, I guess. As soon as I could go to school and take an elective like band as an elective, you know, as soon as I could have real drumsticks and play as soon as I could learn anything. So 6th grade, I guess, 12 years old.
Okay. So, when you were in 6th grade, did you take drum lessons?
I tried to take some drum lessons from a guy who wouldn't let me play the drum set. So I quit.
Do you feel like you had an innate connection to the instrument so that when you were trying to like start over and get this formal training that it just wasn't connecting with you?
My brain is just too scattered to go about learning how to play drums the proper way.
Do you think there is a proper way?
Well, you know, like the technical, like I'm not technically a good drummer, but I like to.
What does that mean? What does it mean to be a technically good drummer?
You're never going to see a John Sherman DVD how to play.
Yeah, but most of the people that have DVDs are terrible drummers, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, like.
I mean, isn't it just like you have to be good enough technically to facilitate the ideas that are inside of you, right?
What?
That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, it was hard for me to study. You know, like as soon as I got my own kit, then I would play constantly all the time. But I wouldn't play the stuff that I was getting tested on in school, you know. And I could never read music very well. I would just, but if I saw someone do it, I could do it.
Were you confident?
So I'd cheat all the time.
Did you think you were good?
Back then, yeah. I thought I was the shit.
Do you think you're the shit now? Be
No.
honest.
No.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't know. The older I get, the
Life-
less confident I get.
Life took you down a few notches?
Yeah, I guess. I also, you know, when you're a kid and the only other drummers you know are some of the guys at your high school and some of the few local bands around, the whole big fish in a small pond thing, you know, like maybe I was the shit in that little zone, but once I got out into the real world and saw a lot of other drummers, you know, I'm not the shit.
So when you moved to Portland, what was your plan?
I didn't really have a plan other than to find people to play music with, and that's why I moved here, because I knew some guys that I wanted to play with, and it was either here or San Diego, and all my San Diego friends were like, don't move here, this town sucks. And it was cheap in Portland back then, too.
Were you into San Diego bands at the time?
Well, I mean, you know, like, I was a big fan of all the, well, not all, but a lot of the Swami bands, Drive Like Jehu.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Portland just had trees, and you could rent a house for a couple $100 and have a place to practice in the basement.
Did you have ambitions of becoming a professional drummer?
Well,
Or even, was that your dream?
I mean, I think my goal was always to not work at anything other than being in a band. So I guess that's professional.
Yeah. So, and now that's what you're doing, right? For the last
yeah.
several years now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel satisfied with where your life is?
Like therapy.
You're next.
You don't have to answer that, man.
Yeah, I'm satisfied. I mean, Yeah, I'm a lucky dude. My life is pretty amazing, so I'm satisfied. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to move on to our next guest. Everybody give a round of applause to Mr. John Sherman, the Shermanimal. Okay, so folks, you know our next guest as the drummer of the Decemberists, but over the past 30 years, he's also played with the Dharma Bums, the Minus Five, and the Jicks. For the past several years, he's also served as the primary songwriter, singer, and guitarist for the band Perhapsed. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Moen. So where do you come from, Mr. Moen?
Just 45 minutes down the freeway. Salem, Oregon was where I was brought up.
What was that like?
It was kind of terrible.
Really?
No, I was eager to exit.
What did your parents do?
My dad, for the bulk of that time that we were being raised up there, he was working in a nursery, doing plants. He was in charge of all the chemicals.
Wait, what?
The pesticides and stuff before we were all super aware of the...
How's he doing? Is he okay?
He's good. He's good. Yeah.
Okay, good.
78 now. He's doing all right. Yep.
Must have been the right chemicals then.
I don't know if he just kept his mask on or whatever it was. I used to help him in the summers, probably bad. That's a guy I hadn't thought about. That's pretty kind of bad. My days are numbered.
Do you feel itchy right now?
Thanks for making me feel like someone here today. Yeah. And my mom, she worked in like a counseling center as a receptionist.
What kind of music did they listen to?
They had no records of their own. They chose no music, but it was always public radio, and it felt like in those days there was a lot less talk, so it was mostly classical music and bluegrass on the weekends.
Did you get into it?
I wouldn't say that, but I think I still relate to music. I like having that sort of that ambiance. Something kind of mellow cooking in the background works for me nowadays still. But I was never really, interested in researching like who wrote that piece and what was that all about. It was sort of there always.
When did you start buying your own music or kind of identifying with bands or getting into your own thing?
I was this is interesting because for some reason my dad's not that scary, but I was afraid that he wouldn't appreciate me wanting to listen to rock music and pop music. It sounds like I was, born in the 40s or something. but
what was that based on? Did he ever say that explicitly?
We never listened to it at home, I think. And he didn't. And he was, he was focused in his, when he was.
Did you want to please him?
Yeah, didn't want to upset the apple cart.
Got it.
He wasn't mean about it or anything. I just sort of made a lot of assumptions. I probably still do that, But
so you haven't grown much.
No,
is what you're trying to say.
Not really. But he so I kind of was, very ginger about, I wanted to get the K-Tel rock record and had Kansas and Boston and all of that on, But what I really got first was Roger Whittaker. Everybody talking about a new world.
Of course.
So yeah, he's a great whistler, and he kind of looked like my dad.
I did some cursory research for this thing, and on Wikipedia it says that you have perfect pitch. Is that true?
No, that's a lie.
Is it a lie?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking if it was true, then maybe you would have been singing the Roger Whittaker song in the correct key just now.
No, probably not. No.
Do you have any idea where that comes from?
Who wrote it?
Yeah, who wrote that?
So my deal with being a drummer is that I'm just in bands. Like I'm in a band. I play the drums to be in a band with people to make music. So it's not really very drummy, a lot of the time. And I think so. And I'm also not very Facebooky and all that stuff. So my bandmates always think it's funny that I don't have anything out there, and so they write some.
So your bandmates wrote your Wikipedia page.
Yeah, but it's been different bands over the years that have kind of concocted this huge lie.
So the Dharma Bums bandmates wrote it when it was like a mimeographed Wikipedia,
That's
and
correct.
then it got transcribed to the internet later.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No. So those guys they don't do that stuff either.
What was the name of your first band?
That's a good question. I think it was probably Drifter UK. because we thought the UK thing sounded cool. And just Drifter was too much like the Drifters, which was a little too casual because we were like heavy metal. You know, we liked Judas Priest and stuff. So, or it might have been the Mark V -1 because there was only 4 of us. I can't remember that. But these were like when I was still in high school and just friend bands.
You were still funny in high school.
And then the Plaid Golfers was an early band too. And that was kind of social commentary, you know. That's that name, Plaid Golfers.
So how long have you been playing music as your living? Like, how long have you been doing it professionally?
Well, on and off, you know, for a long time. But
Was that an ambition of yours?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I
Are
feel
you-
like in Portland, you used to not be able to say what your ambition was.
Yeah, I was.
When first
I
came
interviewed
here.
Sarah from Unwound the other day, and we were talking about that. Do you think that attitude is based in an affluent kind of basis? Like, lots of the people that I've interviewed that came from more meager means had no bones about being ambitious. Where does that attitude come from?
I don't know. I don't think any of the people that I think about when I think about that.
Dude, are you signed to
subject.
Capitol?
I am.
I'm just being a jerk.
Yeah, I totally am. Yeah.
Get out of Portland.
Just got out of my champagne bath. But no, I mean, I'm talking about like when we were young, you know,
Yeah.
and we were all, you know, middle
But you
class or
also
below.
you wanted to do it though, right? Like you wanted to play music and not
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah, and I wanted to be. I think I wanted to be famous. I think I wanted to be.
What was your
wanted to be
definition of famous?
appreciated. Well, that's, you know.
Who were you modeling yourself after? Like,
No, why
anybody?
would that? I wasn't. I don't
Okay.
think. But I did want to. Well, for a long time, I thought, you know, write about Tom Waits is good. Like I didn't want to be Tom Waits, but
you wanted to be one of his crazy
like somebody
drummers.
that everybody thinks is really groovy, but he's making a living, but he's also, you know, he's not tied down to the.
You're actually
Machine
at
or-
that exact level right now, right?
I might
you're
be.
basically at that level.
I might be, but I'm also my job. You know, I'm a side man. Drummers are side people most of the time. You know, so you're always kind of wondering how long it'll last and whatnot. I mean that's.
Are you nervous?
Totally.
Like, does that make you nervous?
You ask me a lot of crazy questions. And, yeah, I'm always a little nervous. Yeah,
But-
I mean, you know, I've been fired from a gig before. You know, it's like, yeah, you know,
Which gig did you get fired from?
that was a long time ago.
All right. I mean, you're really good. Why would you get fired?
Well, you know, whatever. I don't
Do you
know.
punch somebody?
No, it wasn't anything like that. It's just, you know, so yeah, you nervous. I want to be good, but I don't really want to practice.
You don't?
Do
Do you feel good when you practice?
Maybe.
Do you get bored practicing?
Not with a band.
What about if you're just practicing by yourself? Do you ever do
Yeah,
that?
I don't do that. I mean, I don't really much. I don't much. And you could tell if you listen to me play. If we went over next door and I sat down at a drum set, I would sound very rudimentary.
Do you think you play better when you're with other musicians? Does it inspire you to play better?
Yeah, that's the whole point. The whole thing for me, you know, to want to do.
Because you want to connect to
I could
other
never,
people.
you know, like triplets with. I never could.
You just did it.
Never, but
Bro.
But if you
Bro,
drums,
you just did
I
it.
can't do that. You know, that's like the ollie of drumming,
That's the ollie. Okay.
which I could never do an ollie either. You know, I mean, to me, there's like there's certain levels of things where, and I know that, but I also know that if I buckled down and attempted to do it regularly, I could overcome it. But then I'd sort of drift off. And
Do you think that would make you into a different different drummer that you wouldn't necessarily like?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it would do a world of good for me to be more confident coming into situations where I'm playing drums.
You don't feel confident coming into situations.
No, I feel reasonably confident in most situations, but I've gotten into a few where I realized I was out of my depths, you know, because I hadn't applied myself to.
Did you try out for Dream Theater?
No, Blue Man Group.
You did?
No.
All right. Well, we're going to keep it moving.
Let's do.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody give a round of applause for John Moen.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
All right.
Our next guest is best known for her work as a member of Quasi and Sleater-Kinney, but over the past 20-plus years, she's drummed with a veritable who's who of notable Portland-based artists, including Elliott Smith, Steve Malcolmus, and Wild Flag. She comes to us fresh off of a week-long stint as a guest drummer for the 8G Band on Late Night with Seth Meyers in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Janet Weiss.
Are you going to ask me about my mom?
Hell yeah, I am.
Please don't.
What did your mom do?
Please.
You don't want me to?
What did my mom do? A lot of stuff.
Like what?
I didn't really grow up with my mom too much.
Did
She
she
was a
live in California?
teacher.
Well, you grew up in California. You
I
grew
did.
up in Los Angeles.
I lived with my dad mostly.
Okay, so your parents split up
7.
early on?
Yes.
When
Boy,
you were
this is like therapy. I was 7 years old and my parents split up.
How do you feel about that?
Sucked!
Do you want to lie down?
No, definitely not. We
Want some
can lie down.
Xanax? Last night we all had dinner together, except for Tim, who was on a gig, and we were talking about doggy Xanax and doggy Prozac.
Okay, I stole my dog Xanax. All right. Just tell her, let's get it out there.
So what did your dad do?
My dad, by the time he was my dad, he was a lawyer. But he actually...
Who else's dad was he? You said by the time he was your dad.
well, before he was my dad, before I was born, he actually worked for Union Oil, and he was there for the birth of the gas mart, and he went around and talked the gas stations into opening the little market at the gas station.
Oh, wow.
Which is cool. But then he became a lawyer, like a personal injury lawyer.
Most of my family is lawyers, especially on my mom's side. My mom's side is Irish, and they're all a bunch of loud, drunk lawyers.
He wasn't really very lawyer. He's like a tennis player. That's how I would just have described him.
That's his primary characteristic?
That's all he cared about.
Did you play tennis?
I did.
Were you good?
Decent. I mean, he gave us lessons when we were little.
Did you ever beat your dad?
No, he's good.
Okay.
He was really good. But I found this guy who gave lessons in Portland kind of recently, and he had seen Sleater-Kinney open for Pearl Jam. He was like a Pearl Jam fanatic. So he gave me free lessons because he loved Pearl Jam, and I ended up hooking him up with Pearl Jam to give them lessons. And he was like,
that was his whole plan all along.
But he told me that I was good at the net volleying because I was a drummer. He's like, the hands, it's from playing drums. It's like, I don't know about that, but...
He was just being nice so that he could meet Eddie Vedder, right?
Yeah, well, it worked. Good for him.
What's his name?
Darren.
All right, Darren.
Yeah.
Where is he?
He moved away.
He moved to Seattle to live at Eddie Vedder's house in the guest house.
He's a professional stalker now.
So you grew up in Hollywood and Los Feliz in Los Angeles. When did you start playing music?
Not till, I played guitar very badly. I bought a guitar. I had never played a note of guitar. And I went to a guitar auction, and they held up an acoustic guitar that I thought looked really pretty. And there was no one there, and I bid on it, and I paid $250 for this amazing Gibson acoustic that is worth a lot more. And they since have tried to buy it back from me.
When was this?
This was, I don't know, 1942.
Okay.
A long time ago. It was, I don't know.
How old were you when you started getting into music?
Well, I got into music when I was little, very little, listening to music. And I had 2 older sisters, so they turned me on to a lot of good music and dragged me to a lot of shows.
Are either of them musicians?
But they probably could be, but they're not.
Are they lawyers?
No.
Are they tennis players?
One is a doctor, and one is an artsy type. And both tennis players, yeah. That's all my dad wanted was tennis players.
Well, he got one at least, right? Or both?
We all play about the same.
Oh, okay.
But not professionally, no.
Did any of you try to play professionally?
No.
Okay.
It's miserable. I'm not a single sport person. I'm like a team player.
Volleyball?
I play
soccer?
volleyball. Yeah.
All right. So your first concert ever, what was it?
David Bowie.
Oh, I mean,
Thanks
come on,
to my
everybody.
sisters.
Give it up.
Thanks to my sisters. Yeah.
Sarah Lund said that you have an interesting concert story. Do you know what she's referring to?
Sarah. It's not.
It's not David Bowie.
No, she wants me to tell the story about when I made my sister Kathy, who is a crazy Bruce Springsteen fanatic, just as a side note. She calls him Bruce. And
Is she the doctor or the artsy
She's the
person?
doctor.
Okay.
She dragged me to see, not dragged me, it was really fun. We saw Bruce Springsteen 7 nights in a row, and we made a sign out of a sheet that said "Prove It All Night," and we held it up from the balcony. But she really thought that Bruce Springsteen was her friend, so it was odd. Wait, what was I gonna? What story was it? Oh, the Pumpkins. We made the Clash, who were my favorite band in high school. We made them jack-o'-lantern heads that looked like them, and
So there was
found out where they were staying. This is on the Combat Rock tour. Found out where they were staying. The Weiss girls are very resourceful, and I don't know how I did it, but I ended up calling Mick Jones's room, and I knew it was his voice because I'd listened to 5,000 interviews, and he said, "Come to the hotel and bring your present. We're going to the airport." So we laid these jack-o'-lantern heads like on the fancy rug in the lobby of the Westwood Hotel, and didn't realize that they don't even have Halloween in England. And Joe Strummer said, "Do you put candy in it? What do you do with it? Do you put candy in it?" And then they were going to the airport, so we had to pick him up and carry him out of there.
So when did you discover drums? When did you become a drummer?
I was 22. And this guy named Rich Ferguson, who was in a band called Blue Movie that Sam and I both have seen, he played standing up. And when I was in college, I started going to a lot of shows, to a lot of clubs, like really got the love of live music, being so close and being able to just get to the front. And this guy, Rich Ferguson, was this crazy drummer, and I said, "Will you give me a drum lesson?" He's like, "Okay." So he gave me a lesson on a pad.
What did he teach you?
I don't know, like paradiddles and doubles, and it's just how to drop the stick and use your wrist. And once he came over, and he told these girls in this band called the Furies that I was a drummer, and they needed a drummer, so they asked me to be their drummer. I had never played a drum kit. I'd never sat down in a drum kit. And a friend of mine, Chuck Prophet, who was a musician, and still a musician, I said, "Do you think I can do it?" And he's like, "All you need is one beat. That's all you need to know. Just learn one beat. You got it." And he lent me his drum kit, and I learned their really pretty terrible record. And went on tour in 2 weeks. And John Moen came to our show at Satyricon. I had been playing 2 weeks. It was just hideous.
Didn't you guys stay?
Was it hideous?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on a second. Was it hideous in retrospect, or at the time were you having a blast?
Sam says I ruined the band because I was too good. So, and I've been playing for 2 weeks.
Well, I recently interviewed Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash's drummer, and he was playing on blue suede shoes after he'd been playing for like a week or two.
Well,
So I
this
mean, I
was
think
not
you took
Johnny.
that to the
This
next
was not,
level,
This
right?
was not Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins.
So what was it? The Furies?
I do remember spoken word in between songs. The singer, she's kind of masochistic. She wouldn't tell me what the first song was going to be. I'd be like, "Just tell me what the first song is so I could mentally prepare." She's like, No, I won't tell you. And then she would just call it out.
If somebody
There's some
did that to you,
improvising going on.
if somebody did that to you now, would you get
I
pissed
make the
off?
set list now.
Well, what about when you were playing with the 8G band and they were just willy-nilly counting
That's
things off?
easy.
That was easy.
And that's not willy-nilly. You know what's coming.
I thought you said that sometimes they would count in
No,
at the
you
last
know what's
minute.
coming.
All right.
That's the easiest job.
So do you think that you would be satisfied doing a job like that full time?
No. I would do it, but I wouldn't be satisfied.
Are you satisfied now doing what you're doing?
I'm not often satisfied.
I think we really need to talk about what your mom did now, so we can get to the basis of that.
It's all becoming clear.
Okay, everybody, give a big round of applause for Janet Weiss. Our next guest has worked both as a drummer and producer with a hugely varied list of legends, including Dick Dale, John Belushi, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Don Ellis, but he's probably best known as the drummer from the seminal punk band Fear. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Spit Stix Leitch. We've got another Angelino.
That's right, born in L.A.
And you grew up in North Hollywood, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And were your parents musical people?
Yep.
What did they do?
My dad is a professional musician, toured Vegas, Reno, Tahoe, did that circuit for 35 some odd years. My mom had when he met her, his drummer, Bill Richmond, who's a very well-known comedian writer now, introduced my parents. And she was singing in like Lennon Sisters kind of a band. It was like, 3-part female vocals. So my dad and she got together and never really did music together, but obviously hit it off. And my dad's career really supported in those days 5 kids, and he was able to support a family, 2 cars, and mountain cabin up in Arrowhead. And it's different times.
Well, you have kids and you supported them through music, correct?
Yeah. I have 2 kids, 2 different marriages. My son's 31, so that was one at a time. And then when he was 20, I had my daughter, different marriage. So it was one at a time. It was pretty easy.
Which one do you love more, your son or your daughter?
There's no answer for that. I miscall them. I'm sure every parent does that. You call them the wrong name. Even though one's a girl, one's a boy, I'll call my daughter Clay. And I remember my mother doing that.
They don't even both have gender-neutral names. You just call them.
It's just parents think of, you're the same. You're my kid.
What do you? So what do your kids do?
My oldest son is an artist, and he works in a sushi bar as his moneymaker. But he's actually really pretty well-known artist in Los Angeles. He's working on a series of art for a gallery right now in Culver City, and so his art is in the wrist. Mine are in the wrist too, but a little different.
And your daughter?
She's plays guitar as her choice. I gave her some drum lessons just on my little pads in my studio, and she was amazing. Beginner's luck. You're talking about first couple weeks when you got no barriers telling you what you can't do. And for her, she was amazing. I just gave her some basic beginner lessons, and she was like nailed it. And I was so proud of her, and she was like, I don't want to play drums.
She just did that to spite you.
She was amazing. Two lessons, and I was bragging rights, But,
did you have an aptitude for drumming right away? For music right away?
Everyone in my family played music, and I have 2 older brothers who, my brother right above me was a professional musician and actor, did the Andy Griffith Show and was in plays and stuff. Wow. That's my brother who lives here in Portland, 4 years older than me. A brother 5 years older than me started touring. So by in the late 60s, he was actually really doing it. He was a band called Derek. They had a hit called Cinnamon. They were touring the States. And it was like, he was my idol, He had the cool clothes and hair and all the cool friends. And
what were his clothes at the time?
Well, this is 1969. He had these beautiful blouse, it's like a man's shirt, but these cool kind of like things, this part of the shirt was like coming down. And he had a P bass, which he cut to match it. So he destroyed the P bass. It's still worth like $6,000, but that's what you do in those days. But he was my idol for many, many years.
So is it true that you studied with Art Pepper and Joe Pass?
Yeah, there was some Arizona. There were some summer jazz workshops that I was able to learn with those guys, and those guys taught. They helped me in a compositional way. For instance, Art Pepper would say things like, "When you got an idea for a song, don't put the melody in there, or don't put the lyrics in, just hum it." So he would qualify your melody. I said, "Hum me your melody." And it would have to work that way. And Joe Pass was more focused on, he says if you're going to do something, there's 3 elements: rhythm, melody, and harmony. He says if you're going to do any one of those, make them uncommon, and then you'll own them. And most people just kind of, they'll take a snapshot of something and kind of make it their own. And it's almost like an homage to something, but Joe Pass was like, own it. just make it slightly different. I do that to this day, like taking a rhythm like bam, 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 which is just simple clave.
Right.
But turning it into a rumba clave in rock and roll is not what people do. Most people do the heart, bam, 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 and just from Joe Pass's standing on my shoulder, it'd be like bam, 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 bam. Just make it a little ill. Just own it, and that's some really vital lessons. And I was still in high school at the time, but never forget it.
So I really think of jazz as a spiritual predecessor to punk rock. But what is it about punk rock that resonated with you, and why did you decide to go that way instead of playing jazz?
I was playing jazz. Actually, I was playing. I was just playing standards out of high school. I was playing bossa nova and jazz, and bossa nova jazz, bossa jazz.
Out of high school, meaning you were playing professionally?
Yep, right out of high school. I started touring when I was 19.
Who were you touring with?
A band called Born, which is just like this band that was, it was really playing bossa jazz, and we were touring as far as up to Seattle. And that was great. I was like right out of high school and actually working.
Did it feel like the world was opening up to you when you were doing that? Was it exciting?
It was, because here, I'm no longer living at home, and it's this bright, open future, and playing music professionally. And it wasn't what I imagined it would be. It was kind of disappointment on a lot of ends, but just that's the nature of your fantasy of what things are going to be. I remember meeting Louis Belson, a professional drum shop in Los Angeles,
right.
in Hollywood, and he's got a bottle of Zildjian cymbal cleaner, this bright thing, and and I was so happy to meet him. My mom had met him and told me and got me his picture. So I reminded her. I said, "My mom's Joe, Mary Jo, blah blah blah." And he goes, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I go, "You polish your own cymbals?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, that's disappointing."
Do you polish your own cymbals? You polish your cymbals?
Oh, I've got a buffing wheel. I do.
A buffing wheel?
I mean, some people are purists. They're like, "Don't change it. You'll ruin it." But I'm all about polishing them. I buy new cymbals, of course, too, which is even better. But I don't mind polishing them.
So what is it about punk rock that really resonated with you?
Well, at the time, it was 78 when I first joined Fear, and I first started playing punk full time. But in 76, my roommate, his parents lived in England, and he had come back with the Nevermind the Bollocks record. And I was not into rock at all at that time. I was totally a jazz head, and fusion especially, super fast fusion.
What do you think it is that makes jazz people think that rock and jazz are mutually exclusive?
I don't think everyone feels that. I feel like they cross quite a bit, and I try and hybrid them myself. So I don't feel that way. I feel like I love drum and bass, and I feel like it's another form of jazz. It's mostly instrumental. They don't call it jazz, but it's not. It's electronica, but it's really jazz. There's jazz elements to it, and I think that's probably one of the richest kinds of music right now that I listen to, at least.
What was it about punk that made you feel like you could express yourself in that medium?
The energy level. When I was playing jazz, people's backs were turned and they're sipping their drinks and they're talking. They're not paying any attention to you. And even I'd go to the early punk shows at the Mask, the old Mask on Hollywood and Cherokee, and people are all, then it was pogoing. It wasn't a mosh pit yet. And you're just having some beers.
Did you pogo?
I did. with my homies, though.
I think you might have to demonstrate pogoing for the kids in the audience later.
It's really just jumping up and down and bashing your buddies. And it's people but people were intimidated. They come in and see that, and they thought, "Oh, I got to go work out or shoot up or something to come back, and I can be competitive here." But it was just friends.
Did you ever shoot out?
I never did.
You never got into that?
No. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends did, and they're not here anymore. So fortunately, I knew when to go home.
I also feel like the late 70s, early 80s was a time when jazz was kind of transitioning from being a music of the people to an academic art form. Did you feel that way? Did you feel like like you couldn't express yourself or create something new in that medium at the time?
I felt that way with most genres. I felt like reggae. I got in trouble for saying reggae was dead because I felt.
Who did you get in trouble with?
Some
reggae
magazines,
police.
Some magazines, and people wrote because I said but I meant the form was dead, and I thought jazz's form was dead too. So it was disappointing when people just stuck to this form, head, solo, head, and it was just very front back, and so I kind of was kind of disillusioned with jazz as far as the money went, as far as the whole thing. I was disillusioned. And a friend of mine was playing guitar in this punk band, which I thought punk was over. And their drummer had to quit because his girlfriend didn't like punk.
So this was when, like 1980, and you thought punk was
78.
over? Yeah, 78.
It was really the end of 77. It's really very, very end of 77, early. It was January 78. And by February, I joined Fear of 78. But I thought it was over. I thought Sid Vicious died and it's over. And then
Do you think it's over now?
No. Well, it's still, there's a form that's looped around, and there's a kind of homage to like a lot of people playing punk, kind of wanting to be exactly like a certain little period of time. Maybe they weren't alive.
Sure,
then.
which is how
Kinda
jazz
stuff.
was at the time.
True. But
Right.
jazz, when I was in high school, though, jazz was still evolving. It was turned from hard swing into straight. And that's where we got like Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea and things like that. So it went from swing and it started straightening out.
It's interesting, though, because I interviewed Mike Clark, who was Herbie Hancock's drummer in the 70s, and he played on Thrust and lots of the Headhunter stuff. And he's, like, bored with that. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to swing. And it's interesting, like...
That's funny.
in
I was the
retrospect,
opposite.
hearing-
I'm like, I don't want bebop anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Herbie was evolving, and Mike was like, no, I wanted to play straight ahead. So
That's funny.
I guess the grass is always greener.
Exactly.
Is that applicable? I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyways.
I think you expose yourself with everything and just, for me, it's like getting my comfort zone and drumming bigger and bigger. So whatever, I try and bring it in, encompassing it into my chops.
All right, well, everybody give a big round of applause for Tim Spit-Six Leitch.
Today's episode of The Trap Set is sponsored in part by our friends at Keplinger Drums. Greg Keplinger has been an innovator in his field since the late 70s, making snare drums from a variety of metals, including copper, brass, and black iron. Keplinger also designs and builds a variety of percussive instruments from stainless steel and other metals. Handmade at his Seattle studio, these one-of-a-kind noisemakers add interesting and unique colors to any drummer's sonic palette. Check out KeplingerDrums.com for more information, or visit their Instagram page to see their work.
So let's open it up to a panel discussion. So anybody can just kind of chime in at any time. But I want to start with something that you said, John Moen, about kind of just feeling like this could end at any time. How does everybody feel? Like I feel like drummers are, at least in my experience, talking to lots of drummers are often viewed as the most expendable member of the band. And how do you guys feel now? Like all of you are making your living playing drums. Do you feel like it's going to last forever? Do you feel like it should last forever? How do you feel right now? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel like you're settled? What do you think? Stable? What? Come on, Sherman. What do you got?
I'm constantly nervous and freaking out about money, but I feel like I won some game or something, and at some point someone's gonna be like, oh no, we were bullshitting you. You have to go to work tomorrow. So
Would that make you sad, or would you be like, well, at least I won the game and I got to do it?
I mean, I'm not assuming. I'm sure that it's not going to last, and that I'm constantly trying to think of like, all right, what am I going to do when this?
Is that detracting?
stops?
Is that detracting from your ability to enjoy it in the moment?
No way.
Okay.
No, man, no, not at all. I didn't grow up rich, and I didn't. I've always. I'm making enough to like. It's like the same as I was making when I was bartending, so I know I can find a fucking bar to work at, and I'll be the same.
Do you think it would be depressing to go back to a bar at this point?
Yes, but that's just because I don't deal with people as well as I used to. And
Why not?
A people job. I don't know, fucking old and getting older. And,
How old are you?
No, I'm the baby.
You're like
I guess,
40.
Shit, but, yeah, but still, I don't know. It's a whole social anxiety thing.
Are you comfortable right now?
No. Nope.
Janet, what would you do if it all ended right now and you couldn't make a living playing drums?
Well, I don't make a living only playing drums.
What else do you do?
I have had numerous jobs, but now I do locations for Portlandia in the summer.
Do you like doing that?
Is it fun?
It's interesting. It's very hard. It's challenging. And somehow it uses a lot of skills that I learned being in a band for all these years. I feel like,
Sure.
what job am I ever going to get? You know,
Well,
except
being in a
like
band is really hard,
being-
and you have to develop a specific skill
well,
set.
from where I come from, the kind of touring and band being in that I've done is you do a lot more than just being in the band. You have to tour manage, you have to, you know, do the merch and strategize and but as far as the making a living goes, it's always very tenuous and there's no security at all.
Was there a point where you were able to embrace that and feel comfortable, or do you feel?
Well, it's obviously
unsettled?
I can handle it, or I wouldn't have been doing this for 20 years. Some people can't handle it at all. But it's, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for a secure thing. The idea is to play music that I care about and love. So if I have to get a job to do it, I'll do that. And I don't make music for commercials, so there's not that revenue stream, and I'm not on a major label, so there's not that revenue stream.
Would you make music for commercials?
No.
Why not?
Because I think it ruins the music. That's a whole nother panel discussion.
Well, I actually
that's
used
a
to make a
choice.
lot of music for commercials when
I wouldn't sell my band's music to a
Right,
commercial.
that's different. But would you write music for a commercial
maybe,
anonymously
maybe.
if they paid you like $30,000 for a 30-second ad?
Well, it wouldn't have to be anonymous, but if it wasn't,
Well, they wouldn't say, like, the commercial doesn't say,
it's
like,
not that I would
Samsung,
hide
music by
and do
Janet
it.
Weiss.
It's not that I would hide, but if it was music specifically for that purpose, then that's different.
Yeah.
To me.
Because then it doesn't dilute the meaning of your band's music, but then you're just doing something else.
So, but that's something I decided not that I don't do. Even for $5 million, I don't do that. So
Really? Not for $5 million?
No.
Would you write music specifically for a commercial for $5 million?
maybe, yeah, maybe. But
What if it
that's-
was for like a really good company?
No.
Like Costco. They treat
Everyone
their
always
employees
says that. What if it was for no? Unless there was some sort of like great benefit for a lot of people, like
Well, then you could take that $5 million and give it to people.
no, that's
You
that's
wouldn't.
not that's not how it works. So there's not a ton of money to be made in my world, but it's not. I make enough through all my different things. I've done a lot of different records, and I get a little bit from a little bit here, a little bit there, and then I work in the summer, but I'm always hustling, always.
Have you always been a hustler, or has that been by necessity?
No, it's just, you're the drummer. Like, you could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, that's why, like, for me,
Have you ever gotten kicked out of a band?
I don't think so.
So
But
you
I always
couldn't
had
be
the
gone
van.
tomorrow, could
I
you?
always had the van.
You own the van, so that makes
And I
you a
had the
little bit less
practice
expendable.
space. I had
Yeah,
the practice
exactly.
space in the van, and I sell the merch.
This is what we call pro gear, pro attitude, folks.
Well, I mean, no one is. I think everyone except the singer and the songwriter are expendable. And even the singer can be expendable. I mean, look at Van Halen.
Journey, Van Halen.
Yeah, I mean, Queen.
Right.
Queen tours.
They do?
Yes, so there you go. So yeah, you could be fired or, but I want to make music that matters to people, really. So that's not always profitable.
How is the dynamic of Quasi different from the dynamic of Sleater-Kinney? Are you more
Sam's a
involved in...
tyrant. Just kidding. It's very different. I think Quasi is like a real. It was such an immense learning experience for me. A place where I became the drummer that I am, and I had a bandmate who was very encouraging to, show my personality, and I'd say, what do you like better, this or this? And he always picked the, more fills, more personality, more originality, and it kind of ingrained that, like, that was okay. It wasn't until later that I actually played on a Go-Betweens record, and they would say, okay, put the crash right there. And I had never had anyone...
Were you able to embrace that as a different challenge,
Yeah,
or were
sure.
you like, fuck this shit?
No. I mean, it's not my preferred way of playing, but they'd say, we don't want any cymbals over the singing. And I had never had anyone say that to me, because I played in Quasi mostly, where the more kinetic and the more excitement, the better. And I always wanted to play things that didn't sound like anybody but me. That was my goal. It was just, you hear those drummers on the radio and you know who it is, and that's what I always wanted.
Do you feel like you've gotten there?
Sort of. I mean, sometimes I
It's
hear
always
myself
sort
and I
of,
don't
right?
know it's me, but I think I've developed a certain style.
What's your take on this, Tim? Like, do you feel settled? Do you feel like you're stable, or is it tenuous always?
I think it's always tenuous. I don't think I've followed my drums as necessarily my main. I haven't looked at it as a source of profit or to profit off it, and that's just been my own choice. If I didn't feel comfortable with a group, or then I just move on. Even though maybe that I was playing with Nina Hagen and living in Berlin, and everyone in the band was like really messed up on coke and a lot of drama.
Did you do coke?
No, I have, yeah, but not
it
like
fun?
that. That one time. So I left. I was had endorsements, and we were playing in front of 20,000 people at a time, and I didn't like it. The people were like paranoid and just crazy, and not Nina herself, but the manager and some of the other people in the band, and so I got out. So I wasn't profit based, and I just went back and started driving on movie crews in LA when I went back.
What are some of the more fulfilling experiences you've had musically?
I'm a composer too, and I do TV commercials, and I made quite a bit of money at it. And
Do you work for Wyden and Kennedy sometimes here in Portland?
no, I haven't done much commercial. I lived in New York for 13 years, so I have a lot of connections out there. And I did a Victoria's Secret commercial, but
Okay.
it was off of, they licensed it off of my record, so I didn't have to write for them. However,
So you didn't feel like you were compromising yourself?
Not at all. And I don't feel that way in any circumstance. I play in cover bands and all sorts of things.
See, Janet? Stop being so puritanical.
But it's just my choice.
I'm just being an asshole. I'm kidding.
I'm pretty much an opportunist when it comes to income, and I'm pretty open to whatever I need to do.
Are you happy with the level that you're at right now?
Since I moved to Portland, when I lived in New York City, I was teaching music software primarily and doing documentaries, music for documentaries. And I wasn't playing drums much. I had a band, but I was playing maybe once a week. And I came to Portland, and of course no one's going to hire me for $100 an hour to teach them music software. So I started teaching drums, and that totally changed everything. I started playing all the time because everyone's got basements that they can jam. In New York City, it's $45, $50 an hour to practice. Here is everyone's got basements and drum kits, so I was playing like all the time. Then my students, I found, were putting a flame under me. Like I was more encouraged, like I better learn something else, or I get people emailing me, I want to learn sticking. So it was a flame. So my drums have totally transformed since I playing.
What's your teaching style?
Endurance is kind of what I focus on, but it's really balance. It's all about the left hand. I'm all about leading with the left hand because it's something that I'd never used to do. I'd be pretty balanced, but I'm transcribing for Jose right now, the first Fear record, the drum tab, and I'm listening to my fills, and it's all right leading. This my crash is my right, and my left is like stuck to my chest or something, you know. Whereas now I'm all over the place. I'm all crossing over, and I'm very left, and all my old tricks are new because I'm starting with the lefts. And plus, having students and studying things that I never studied has made my drumming, my chops, I think, are better than they ever have been from moving here.
Does it feel good? Does it make you enjoy playing more?
No doubt. It makes you want more. You get ahead. You know, just playing double stroke rolls or practicing something, you know, intensely for a long time. It's like, ooh, I don't want to go back now. So
Really? Because sometimes I feel like I feel a little bit of ambivalence towards that, because it's like, just because you have a great command over a language, for example, doesn't mean that you can write poetry really well. So having a command over the technical aspects of drumming doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be more creatively fulfilled.
But if you're poetic in the first place,
well, you're poetic in the first place.
well, that's the thing. I think if you love poetry, and you read poems, you're going to get ideas. Maybe not to plagiarize, but maybe an idea. You read Walt Whitman and say, oh, he's got this great thing. He's in love and blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing, I think, with drums. I think you hear things. And for me, it's like I listen to the radio and analyze something, and it's like, okay, I know exactly what they're doing. And whereas the drummers that maybe change the pattern a little bit and flip things around, pattern I like is AABA, for instance. I see it on the board up there. But that's kind of thing.
I wrote that there because I knew you were going to say
I wrote that. But at any rate, it's the creativity is fed, I think, by the new ideas. It's like just having more words to make poetry with.
Okay, the next question I want to ask all of you is, other than Mr. Moen over here, all of you moved to Portland from somewhere else. What is it about Portland that fosters creativity? Sherman, what you got?
I don't know. I mean, when I moved here, it was super affordable town, so a lot of young artists and musicians were moving here, or had already moved here, and it seemed like this town was just full of people that played music and made art, and so it was easier to be creative when you're just immersed in this environment of everyone you run into is creative. Everyone's doing something, so you couldn't just sit back and not do something. It was easy to be a part of a scene, community, or whatever. And it's shitty all the time, so you can't, you have to stay inside, and inside you write songs and play music.
So are you a lifer? You going to stay here?
I think so, but I don't know. We'll see. The town's getting weird, but I guess all towns get
What do you
weird.
mean by that?
I don't know. I don't want to get into the...
It's because of Portlandia, isn't it?
No.
It's because of artisanal shit, isn't it?
No, it's just like every town gets different, I guess, Every town grows and
It's a
goes
great
through
town.
progress or whatever, and I still
Well, what's
think
the
it's a great town.
alternative?
There's no alternative for me right now, so yeah, I have no plans to leave.
When did you move here?
February 4th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
Very specific. You're almost at your 15-year anniversary.
I know, what are we going to do?
You should go out dancing.
You can go to a Portland strip club.
I told the story about your dancing at the dance party at Club 21 when you danced from the first song to the last song and you had a big sweat stain on your back.
That was the last exercise I got.
That was the best.
That was it.
You had underwear on your head.
I know. I was so embarrassed after I never
awesome.
danced again.
It was awesome.
That was my last dance. Yeah. I moved here. I want you to know that I did move here though too. I moved from Salem. And it was a really big deal because I was.
It's like moving to the big city.
It was exactly that.
And when did you move here?
That was the summer of 1986 when I graduated from high school. I was 17 still, I think. And
did you go to college?
No, not a lick.
Do you ever regret that decision?
No.
You sound really assured.
I'm thinking about
you could have gone back.
I always said no, and I'm just trying to be honest now and really analyze.
Do you want your kids to go to college? Your kid?
I don't have an agenda for my daughter about that. I think I would like for her to feel like it's not, it's an option. I didn't really, it's the same story. Like I could have worked harder in school and I didn't. I was sort of lazy.
Why not?
I'm sort of lazy.
Do you think it's laziness, or did you decide that you wanted to play music and you were focusing on that?
Well, I knew I wanted to be, I want to be an artist of some sort, and I didn't want to. I think I was pretty aware of not wanting to spend my time in ways that I knew were going to be a dead end, for me. Like I kind of knew early in my life how I wanted things to look a little bit, not specifics, but I didn't really.
Do you know, extending from that, do you know what you want your life to look like in another 10 years from now?
No, not really.
That's good.
I think maybe that's sad. Maybe that's the part that's satisfied or something, in me. But.
Janet, would you ever move back to L.A.?
No.
Why not? Your sisters are there, right?
Just the one I don't talk to very much.
The doctor or the arty one?
The other one lives in New York.
The arty one lives in New York?
Yeah.
So you don't... does your sister have a tennis court, the doctor?
No, you're asking me weird questions.
I'm sorry.
Let's talk about music.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
Not about my sister.
Tell me about... Okay, fine. What is it about Portland that is more conducive to music for you?
Well, I moved here in '89, September of '89, and like John said, there were basements to play in. There was cheap rent. There were jobs for musicians.
What was your first job in Portland?
I worked at Willamette Week typing classified ads for 4 years. Wow. I'm a fast typist.
How many words per minute?
Then about 93.
Oh, fuck.
That's all I did all day
really
long.
Good.
And just those ads were hilarious. Those personal ads are so funny. But John was like, honestly, one of the first people I met in Portland. He was 19. He was already a great drummer.
Did you feel like a great drummer when you were like... Oh, well, you weren't drumming yet.
Not then, no. But I remember going to see the Dharma Bums at the Pine Street Theater. And it's huge. I was like, look at all these people. And I had met him. You know, he's like the nicest, cutest guy. And
he's pretty damn
they
cute,
came from the backstage, which was upstairs, and they came down these stairs to get on stage. And all the entire crowd started screaming, like, wow, like the Beatles. And I was like, this is the best. And Portland just...
didn't go very far, though. Like, you
That's
got
not
a
true.
Spokane is a little dicier.
But Portland was
Was he the cutest Dharma Bum? Be honest.
We were pretty...
Everyone was pretty cute.
Guys.
It was a cute band, but John was the cutest.
All right.
You're the best.
You were the cutest.
Who's the cutest person in Quasi?
I thought we were talking about music.
John, who's the cutest person in Quasi?
Oh, they're both beautiful. Beautiful.
That's not fair. There's only two of us. Come on.
Sometimes there's three, right? Once.
Oh, yeah, sometimes there's three.
Yeah.
She's cute, too. Yeah. We played as a four-piece with Sarah Lund, double drums. Sarah and I playing double drums. Ash Bowie from Polvo and Helium on bass. And that was... I think we played one show. Where did we play? Blackbird. Yeah, that was it. One shot. There is kind of I thought of an interesting thing about John and I, that several times you've taken over for me, and then I've taken over for you.
Yeah, you both played with Elliott Smith. You both played with the Jicks.
Mostly junior high. This band Junior High was...
I was in a band called Junior High in Wisconsin. It was before you could search on the internet and know that there were like 20 other bands called Junior High.
It didn't matter. We were in Portland. It was like we were just all kind of doing our thing. And Sean Krogan from Cracker Bash was everyone's favorite band. You know, amazing band. There were great bands here that nobody really knew about but us. But I in 1996 I joined Sleater-Kinney, and I was in Quasi, and I was like, I can't be in three bands, and I had a full-time job. So I quit junior high, and John played. We had a show booked, and John played the show and learned all my drum parts, and it was really kind of unbelievable to see someone playing all your parts and they sound nothing like you at all. It made me realize like how esoteric this thing is. Like drums, it's
like reading a script with two different actors.
You can just play the exact same thing, and because of who you are.
That's like my Kenny Aronoff story, where he squared off all of the CCR beats. That pissed me off.
But then when
did I square off all your beats?
No, it was all like kind of.
How did you feel? Did you enjoy it?
I loved it, but I just thought, wow, this is undescribable. Like what drums are and what they're doing, and it made me feel like you're really valuable in the band. But just to finish the story, then when John quit the Jicks, and then I joined the Jicks, and there was some show where I was like, the first show maybe, and I said like, well, this one song is my favorite song, and you were like, I never even understood what was going on in that song. I just never got that song.
Was that a beat that you had come up with?
No, it was one he had come up with.
Oh, okay.
So I was playing all his beats, and it's really interesting to step into someone's shoes. I think everyone should do it because it really teaches you that.
Well, which living drummer's shoes would you want to step into?
Have you thought about that?
Well, it's not so much that I want to step into someone's shoes. It's just, it's such
Well,
a...
who would be fun to, like,
Well, okay, let's...
if somebody broke their arm, okay? And
Steve Shelley.
Steve Shelley, okay.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. That's really good.
That would be fun.
You watch him, you always think you want to play drums a little bit more after watching him than most drummers. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's the maracas.
He does that one fill over and over, and you're like, that's the best.
Yeah.
No wonder you do it so much. It's so good.
Do you think they're ever going to get back together? Sonic
I
Youth?
don't know. You know, Sarah Lend is another drummer where it kind of makes me feel like how like mysterious and special drums are, because everything you do is opposite of how I do it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh my god, that's so good.
I watched John Sherman play, and you play like how I wish I could play if I'd stayed playing more metal. And not to put you in the category of only being a metal drummer, but a few times I've seen you play, it made me wish I was a little stronger. Or not that you were.
Should we do an arm wrestling contest?
Not that you were just wrestling them down, but you stay musical in that genre in a way that because I tried to be a metal drummer when I was a teenager, and I just kind of was too wimpy, I think, in a way it just didn't end up working out. The bands I was in, we were like, we thought thinking like what we're doing wrong all the time instead of just playing, I guess, or something. But
do you think the Decemberists would ever do a metal record?
I think everyone in the band appreciates it and dabbles in it, and maybe I'm not sure to what result once in a while. But I still love listening to that kind of music, and
what's your favorite metal
music? I couldn't
music?
play in Red Fang. I don't think I could. Endurance. What? Maybe I could take endurance lessons from you. It's like.
What would you do to teach them
so
endurance? What would be your approach?
Single strokes, forward and backwards. That's like the.
What do you mean forward and backwards?
Starting with your right and starting with your left, and then.
Which one is forward?
If you're right-handed, it's
okay.
That way.
Gotcha.
Left-handed is that way.
Gotcha. Very
but
politically
just what
correct.
I do, just to strengthen that, just when I practice, I play left-handed, and I sucked at first. It's like, but after a while, it's like.
That actually sounds like fun. That sounds like a fun drum
It's
lesson.
a good. I mean, I play in a cover
Will
band.
you give John a drum lesson?
I'm gonna do that too.
Give him one right now.
I'm gonna do that.
There's drums here.
Gig.
Anytime.
Well, what brought you to Portland?
I was living in New York, and after 9/11, my daughter was born, and as a parent, you don't want to give them tuna fish. You start becoming real protective.
What?
There's mercury in tuna fish, which is not good for developing kids.
Okay.
But anyway, I became hyper aware of the environment, and checked myself for heavy metals, and my family for heavy metals, and my apartment was rife with mercury.
Which part of the city did you live in?
At Chelsea.
Oh, okay.
So I was less than a mile from ground zero. So I had powdered mercury dust in my apartment, and no one realizes that unless you live there and you start checking for it. So I made really, really good money in 2005. And
doing what?
Movie scores. And I had the opportunity. My brother and my mom were living here in Portland, and I was coming out to visit her. She was in hospice. So when I was here, it's like, someday I'll retire there. But I made really good money in 2005, and I thought the economy was going to fall out then. It took a few more years. But I didn't want to be stuck there. So because of the market... I'm sorry, I knocked your teeth out.
Dick.
And having a 1.5-year-old, I moved out here, and my rent went from like $2,200 to like $600 for a way bigger place, and no air conditioner needed. So I had family here. But I felt the same thing when I moved here, September 2005. Everyone had a basement, and everyone had house parties, and I'd never even heard of a house party before I lived here. And I was trying to form.
You didn't have house parties in L.A.?
Never. I never played a house party there.
Okay.
And I played them since, but not back in the day. And it was just fertile. There was tons of poor musicians, 20-somethings that were, barely eking a living, sharing a house, 10 people or whatever. So the artistic community was super rich here, and it reminded me of Los Angeles back in the late 70s, when there was a lot of people, piled up in one apartment, and you could live, for $100 a month in a place, and there was a lot of that here. So there's a creative community was really, really rich, and I really just immediately felt at home. It wasn't exactly the kind of music I was looking into playing. I had my mind set on one kind, but
What kind?
I was drum and bass. I was playing live drum and bass in New York. I had a band there, and just doing fine with that. And I came out here, and I couldn't find players that could play it.
Nobody had a 5-string bass?
Well, they did, but nobody was listening to it. It was kind of like I had to dictate every aspect of, kind of like playing reggae. There's things you don't do, and the same thing with a lot of genres. There's certain things you don't cross the line on.
So what are you doing now? Like, what are your? I know you play in Nasal Rod, and how do you divide up your time? What are your different projects?
Well, I'm teaching here. I've got another classic rock band that I play with. It's really Moneymaker. That's where I was last night. So that band plays private parties and casinos and stuff. So that's, you make $100 to $500 a night doing that. So.
Do you enjoy doing that?
I did it at first. A lot of times I'd be like, "What the fuck am I doing here?" Oh, I'm making money. and I found I just did it strictly for money. I started doing sound first for these country bands, and eventually they found out I was a drummer, and I'd make more money playing drums. And I think it's kind of like when you playing the music you like, it's kind of like lifting weights. And this kind of music for me was like pulling down. It was like using a different muscle.
So you were working your lats, basically.
Well, it was holding the tempos back from.
Right.
And drummers are we're kind of like the problem solvers. We got to check everyone's groove and compromise with it to find the happy medium. So I found myself learning to play my backbeat almost late to slow the band down, or my kick drum just a little, like for hip hop and stuff, is like just almost late but not late. So those are skills I never needed before, and just staying controlled became a different form of discipline that I never had before, and it really helped.
Even
my
when you were
chops.
playing jazz?
The jazz I was playing was pretty fusion, and just like punk, it was like race ahead, barely could play it, pedal to metal. Whereas classic rock was like, okay, relax, and it's really helped me with Nasal Rod too, where you're playing thrash beats and a halftime section's coming. So here comes that, and it's like you've got to totally relax your body and get all the excitement and adrenaline out. Like, okay, I'm at halftime. I'm not going to rush this. So that really came from playing in bands that I never wanted to play in, but I strictly was doing it for money, and it's really helped. And that's what I was saying. All these comfort zones that we have as drummers, we don't get out of those. And I think a lot of drummers, myself, I know this happened with Fear. I got to a point where like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to do anything more. And I kind of got complacent, rested on my laurels. And it wasn't until I got out of that comfort zone into situations like, ugh, I don't like this. And then it was like, oh, I can groove. So I think it's helped me. All as uncomfortable as things may be, they turn out to be helpful.
Today's episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by our good friends at Tom Tom Magazine, the only magazine in the world dedicated to female drummers. Check them out online at tomtommag.com.
I think we should open it up to the audience for some questions, but again, so anybody that wants to come up, let's do it. We have a microphone right up here. Don't be shy. Who wants to go first? What? Come on,
There's
somebody.
a stampede right now.
Hi, guys. So I saw that today is Phil Collins' 65th birthday. So I was wondering if anyone had any favorite or least favorite Phil Collins moments
Pass.
as drummers.
When I was a kid in the 80s, I hated Phil Collins.
Why?
Then I had my heart broken, and now I love Phil Collins. I also think he's a great drummer and a great singer and a great songwriter, and I'm unapologetic about it, and I hope that someday he'll come on the show.
That would be cool.
And Face Value is my favorite Phil Collins record. Anybody else have feelings on Phil? Am I the only Phil Collins apologist up here?
People used to tease me by calling me Phil Collins because I sang backup and played drums. And it get me pretty riled at the time, mostly because of Susudio, and it's no fun being an illegal alien. Those are the two ones that made me the most mad about being called referred to.
Unforgivable.
Yeah, there's some bad stops.
He's a great drummer, though.
Yeah,
Yes or no?
He's a great singer.
He's
a
good
great
And
singer.
you shouldn't
I like his
ever
voice.
apologize for anything that you like.
No, that's
I
true.
don't believe in guilty
Or don't
pleasures.
like.
Only
No,
that
I don't think of it
matters.
as a guilty pleasure at all.
Agree to disagree,
Okay?
right? That's what it's about.
Yeah, you know.
You're more of a Don Henley gal, aren't you, Janet? When it comes to singing drummers, Karen Carpenter. You like Karen Carpenter, anybody?
Sir
Like,
Lord
who doesn't
Baltimore.
like?
It's hard to do, sing and
It
play at the
is.
same
It's
time.
really hard. Spit Stix, I know you're a huge Phil Collins fan, right? Fear?
I call him
Fear.
full-
I like that Fear cover of In the Air Tonight that you guys did.
Well, my nickname for him is Full Colon. I don't particularly care for him.
You know what really kind of turned...
You guys are trying to guilt us for not liking Phil
No, I'm
Collins.
not. No, I'm not.
Don't reverse guilt.
Well, Phil Collins wrote this open letter to his fans or to the world a few years ago where he was saying, you know, like, I just wanted to be a cool drummer, and I was in this arty band, Genesis, and I thought I would just be a drummer. I played with Brian Eno. I thought I would just be a session guy. And then my heart got broken, and I wrote a record, and it became this big thing. I never thought of myself as an adult contemporary star. And, you know, now when I look at my body of work and how people perceive me, it's really depressing, and I've thought about killing myself many times. I was like, God damn, Phil.
It's not that bad.
If only you didn't have $1 billion, I would feel bad for you.
That doesn't make me like him more.
All right. Next question.
Ringo Starr, in many books and many interviews, has emphatically stated that the song Rain off Revolver is the best playing of his career. Is there one song you guys have off any album that you think is the greatest of your career?
No.
I like Ayerto on Spain, Chicoria, Spain.
Wait, but you didn't play on that.
I didn't play. No, I think that drummer is that particular track to me is like.
But what is your favorite track that you've played on?
Oh, that I played on. There's a Fear song called "We Destroy the Family," which is it's a 5/8 song,
Yeah.
and that one's like I own it. No one does that beat or can do it.
Ooh, now I want
That's
to
a
learn
challenge, Janet. What about you?
My favorite drumming is on a Quasi song called "The Rhino," just because it's totally unhinged. I'm sure there were a million things going wrong that made us just go crazy when we recorded it.
What was going wrong?
There was just a lot of things in the studio. We were the first band in the studio, and a lot of things, like when you went in the control room to listen back, it was like a wood bench, like really uncomfortable, and you couldn't quite hear if it was even sounding good. And so I think I was very on edge, and sometimes that's good for music.
Yeah.
I've heard people say they play really well when they're hungover, which it's not. I don't think that's true for me, but I understand that sort of you're like not feeling. You're feeling odd and off, and then you get to your instrument and you sort of just explode. And I can hear it in that song.
Your favorite?
I don't really have anything. I think that I can listen to songs that I play on and be like, oh, that. I'm like honestly surprised that Phil came out sounding good, that good or something. But I don't have like I don't think.
What about 1% of One?
I don't.
There's like a 20-minute jam in that song.
Yeah, no, I mean there were some fun jams, but I don't listen to my own drumming and think that that was a complete thought as a song much.
Do you ever feel disappointed when you listen back?
There's been a couple things here and there, but no, I don't listen back. I think that's maybe more a part of it.
You don't listen back. Why not?
Because I'm like a shock in the water, man. I'm like moving forward.
Exactly. The moment is over.
Like,
Do
there's
you
more
practice?
stuff to do.
Do you practice your songs? Wow, I do that a lot.
Well, no, I mean, like
A lot.
there's
What do
always
you do a lot,
another
Jen?
idea going.
I
that way.
practice
By yourself?
all the time, but I practice
Why?
a lot
That's great.
because I have to.
Do you think you need to?
Yes. Well, for stamina, for one, I'm in a band called Sleater-Kinney that plays really fast. Not really fast like him, but fast enough at my age, so I better practice, or I'm going to have a real bad cramp.
All right, well, we could sit here and talk all night, but I think we're going to wrap it up. So, Portland, I really want to thank
all of you for coming out and making our first foray into live events a huge success. I, of course, want to thank our guests, John Sherman, John Moen, Janet Weiss, and Tim Spitzix Leitch, and our sponsors, Collectivo Coffee, Voodoo Donuts, Reverend Nat's Hard Cider, and Culmination Brewing. And, of course, we want to thank our host, Jose. Really, you guys are so lucky. This is one of the truly great drum shops in the world. And thank you so much for being here.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.